So I've done 3 podcasts so far, each with its own distinct intention, ranging from developing communication skills to bonding over common interests to general dating advice. But a few of my listeners told me that I should just pick one theme and focus solely on that. I freely admit that my Grindr Survivor podcast is me trying to address a multitude of issues that have arisen in the age of dating apps, and I'm still exploring where I want to go and what I want to do. So I decided to sit down with Josh Rivers, the creator and host of Busy Being Black, which is an award-winning podcast with over 14,000 listeners worldwide. Josh interviews notable queer people of color, and every week he explores how his listeners can live in the fullness of their queer Black lives. Josh is a true intellectual and a tireless advocate for the LGBTQ community. And I have to admit, I'm insanely jealous of his deep, sultry voice. He knows way more about podcasting than I do, but while we started out talking about how to make a great podcast, we ended up having a much deeper conversation, delving into issues such as intimacy, relationships, and personal growth. So here we go. I'm fangirling. I'm here with the amazing, the beautiful, the awesome, the wonderful, impressive, a true intellectual, Josh Rivers. Josh, thank you for coming on my ghetto-ass podcast compared to yours. So for those who don't know, Josh, he records his podcast in a proper studio with beautiful mics, with beautiful equipment, and he's here in my living room with a lapel mic and a glass of Chardonnay.
Yeah. But I don't get to drink Chardonnay recording mine, so...
Well, you could, or is it not allowed?
I don't know, it doesn't seem very professional, does it? But, I would probably prefer to do it in living rooms with wine.
Okay,
yeah.
That's a podcast right there.
Yeah.
In living rooms with wine.
Yeah.
There you go. So Josh, I'm not even lying. Your podcast is amazing.
Thank you.
Mine is very shoestring, and I'm still learning. And I literally wanted to have you on just to give me some advice. So Josh, what advice would you have? Completely, I freely admit this is for me, but for other queer people or queer people of color who are interested in doing a podcast, what advice in general do you have about starting a message and getting it out there?
Well, I think Busy Being Black was kind of born as a healing project. So I was in a very specific place and was having these wonderful conversations with queer Black people who were offering me advice and consolation and were sharing books with me and were just being very supportive and very wonderful. And as I was having these conversations with them and was feeling uplifted, I was like, wow, there's so much wisdom in this space, and I think that people need to hear it. So
I'll just throw my problem out there.
Sure.
Because a few people have...
So I guess my advice is... Well, for me, it's have the conversations you want to be hearing.
What about... So my 3 podcasts have had kind of in one sense 3... Really 2, but you could argue 3 different messages. The first one was with a professional life coach, Jean Lloyd, who's amazing.
That's right.
And we kind of went through what she felt was missing from the gay male community after the weekend that she did here in London, which you very graciously participated in. The second one was trying to help queer people who might be sci-fi and video game oriented find a space, because I wanted to highlight queer spaces where everyone could be included and everyone could feel accepted. And then the third one was kind of just my general dating advice to a friend. And I feel like all 3 of those are necessary, and those are 3 completely different conversations I want the gay community or the LGBTQ plus community to be having. But a lot of people say, oh, well, you have to choose one, or you have to stay in your lane, pick one lane and stay in it. Kind of what advice would you have in that regard?
For people to mind their business. I would, honestly. Because I think... I love how your brain works also. I mean, we know each other personally, so I know how your brain works. Or I have an idea of how your brain works. But you also don't need to figure it out right now.
Okay.
Right? So, like, it's okay for you just to be having conversations with people that you're interested in and to let whatever comes out of that conversation come out. Like, it doesn't have to be, for busy, for example, I have like a very loose outline before I sit in conversation with someone. I know who they are, I've done my research, and I have a general idea that I want to cross these particular subjects with them because I think that's where the intersection of their identities in life might be the most fruitful, right?
How much research do you do? Because you find these amazingly brilliant quotes from different authors, and I'm like, how the heck does he do that? I can't do that.
Well, some of them are kind of just lodged in my brain, but it depends. Like for Patrick Vernon, for example, we were talking. I know he's really into Afrofuturism. I mean, his podcast Museum of Grooves is in 2084. I mean, you'd love it if you don't listen to it. It's amazing.
I haven't seen it yet, so I haven't heard.
It's so good. And so his whole thing is he wants to look back at the 21st century and understand from an Afrofuturistic perspective what we were going through and where they are in the future, right? So it's all very Afrofuturistic and a bit surrealist. And recently he said that in 2084 they don't have sex with humans; it's interspecies sex. And what kind of conversations?
Oh, that's cool.
Right. So he's super into Afrofuturism. So I was just doing a deep dive into Afrofuturism and found these amazing scholars who had this.
You just Google that. So you take the subject, the area they're in, Google that, and see what material is out there. And
totally, because I don't know everything, right? So
no, and I love sci-fi, but I've never even come across, Don't get me wrong, I'm all for Sonequa Martin Green, like having the lead role on Star Trek, but,
She's amazing, yeah. But that's not Afrofuturism, is it?
Yeah, no.
I don't think so. And that's why I was curious about this conversation with Patrick, because, and that's a piece of advice. It's like, what makes you curious? Because that's going to naturally be more interesting for everybody else to listen to as well, is when you're trying to figure something out for yourself. In any case, I went on this deep dive into Afrofuturism because I wanted to make sure that I understood what it is really, and then found these amazing quotes. And as I asked him questions, so I had these quotes kind of framed it in my mind, and then they gave me a good counterpoint to his, or a way to continue the conversation and ask questions based on these scholarly quotes. So it's like that. So I do the research because I don't know everything, but I want to have like a base level understanding of something before I get into this conversation with someone else.
Okay.
I don't want it to be the first time I'm hearing of it.
Makes sense. Now I have to confess something or ask your permission, because sometimes if I'm thinking, a notable black queer person pops into my head, I think, oh wait, no, Josh has already interviewed them, so I can't do it. May I have your permission?
Oh my God, totally. I'll make the introduction myself. It's so crazy.
I feel silly I'm like, oh, am I stepping into yet a fourth lane of trying to, like, I definitely don't want to step on your toes.
You have to get out of your head, because you are such a deep thinker like me, but like you have to get out of your head, right? Because if you worry too much about what everybody else thinks you should be talking about, you're going to have this hodgepodge of a thing that only speaks at one point or another to a specific person. When actually I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure something out for yourself. Grindr Survivor is ultimately a conversation with yourself about what you're experiencing as a gay man, about the rise of technology, how that's impacting our lives, how it's impacting the human interactions you're having with other people. It's a fascinating exploration of what it means to be a gay man in the 21st century, and I think that's ultimately the crux of the podcast, is what does it mean for you as a gay black man or gay mixed black man in the 21st century to survive, and not just on Grindr, but in any other space that you're in. So I think I would make it a little bit broader, in fact, because I think your very academic mind is very detailed and very prescriptive, and you need to know every step that's going to happen next. And I think this might be a good opportunity for you to step back and exercise some of your creativity, which you clearly have in abundance.
Oh man! Oh, stop! You're too brilliant. You're a true intellectual. I want to solve the problem so we can solve it and move on, as opposed to you're a proper intellectual, a real one like yourself, loves the journey, the learning, the process. Grindr Survivor is one massive scream of frustration.
Yeah.
And me trying to think, okay, there was one set of rules 6 years ago. Now there are a completely new set of rules.
Yeah.
How do I learn these rules so I don't go crazy? And B, how can I scream the rules out there so I can find enough people that I can get a boyfriend and settle down?
But the rules are always going to be changing, and that's the thing.
They are. Oh my.
Always.
Oh my. I thought that was a massive revelation. I was holding back for the second book.
No.
I was like, the rules are actually, they change every 2 years.
Yeah, and everyone's going to be like, duh. Yeah. But they do. Like, it all changes. And I think part of it is right, so I've obviously been through a lot since,
Sure.
well, in my entire life, but particularly since the end of 2017. And I get so frustrated with myself sometimes that I haven't figured out how to heal and how to move on, that there are some things that I'm still super hung up on.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while I'll have this reminder that, like, oh my God, like, this is the journey. Like,
Yeah.
you're actually on the journey. And so it doesn't stop, I think, at any point. And I think that maybe we live in a society that's always kind of encouraging us to try to codify or define things that are so malleable that they're not even worth defining, right? Like, we just have to keep living and keep moving forward. And I think part of the benefit, I think, of the rise in technology and how we're behaving towards each other is that it's revelatory, right? It reveals who we are, what we think about ourselves, what we forget to do, what we're not making time to do, right? So if we look at technology and our use of technology as a moment to reflect, for self-reflection, because it's not always just about other people's behavior, because other people are always just a mirror. It's how am I behaving within this space? What do I want from this space that I'm not getting? Am I giving that to other people? And I think so often we try to project onto other people or onto a piece of technology something that is perhaps we haven't quite figured out for ourselves.
That's deep. Because I focus a big chunk of that in the book. And Jean talks a lot about that. She always says, when you hate something, when you really just despise something in someone else, you really hate it in yourself. I mean, that's just...
I recognize that.
And it's kind of... Do you want to say more about that? It's so brilliant. You just kind of dropped that nugget of wisdom like that.
Well, I think I have a really complicated relationship with Grindr.
Or just dating apps in general, or just that one app?
I only use that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't really use the others. I just have it's the longest relationship I've been in. And it's love hate. It's very triggering for me to be on it.
What triggers you?
The proximity to naughty.
What's wrong with that? Like, we're all human beings. But we're all human beings. Men have impulses.
Yeah, but no, I don't mean sexually naughty. I mean like drugs and alcohol and the ability to just kind of spin out of control. And so it's very triggering for me in that respect, because I don't really have an off switch. So I kind of have this relationship with Grindr whereby I'm like scared to use it sometimes because I wonder what will happen if I do. But then also when I want to, it gives me access to the stuff I want to do. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I've gone from, and I don't know if this is good or bad. So like,
or maybe it just is, right?
It just is, right? So I've gone from like thinking that Grindr is a place where you might find a boyfriend, to like kind of relegating it to this space where it's for fun and party only. But
the issue is then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I feel like once gays get a certain critical mass, in essence, I think there's almost a groupthink dynamic going on in the gay male community, or men who have sex with men, because once everybody is convinced, and I see this across all the apps, but although Grindr seems to be like the poster child for quote-unquote the naughtiness, once everyone is convinced, well, a boyfriend's not possible, then it's not possible because no one thinks it is possible.
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be possible in that space, right?
Then but why? The thing I say is, why not? Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with having a boyfriend who's a mile down the road.
But also, why?
Why have a boyfriend at all, or why have one that's near?
Why does that app need to serve that purpose? See,
well, why not?
I think that what we've done is we use Grindr as a crutch, and so because we live in an age of technology where everything is instantaneous, and we get a notification when something needs our attention, right? Like it's like this It's like this automated service for everything in our lives that we then bestow upon Grindr this immense responsibility to also deliver me every sexual and emotional thing that I need.
Wow.
And actually, I just feel like it's a very outsized expectation that we put on a piece of technology when actually the onus is on us.
Wow.
To be humans with other humans.
So the drama comes from... That's deep. So you're just dropping all kinds of nuggets today. So the suffering really is the expectations we put on the app to deliver something for us.
I don't think, like, in total, no, I don't think it's just that. I think it's a part of it.
Okay.
Right? I think the disappointment that we and I experience on that app, for whatever reason, is rooted in something, right? And it's not just, goddamn this piece of technology, because Grindr is just a tool.
Yeah.
How we use that tool is quite another matter altogether.
Completely.
So at some point we have to recognize that technology is designed to tap the parts of our brain that release dopamine and reward and keep us coming back like addicts. Like,
yeah.
We have to at once acknowledge that, while also acknowledging that it is a tool, right? And it should only take up as much space in our lives as it does on the screen of the phone. Like, that was my big awakening last year, was that I was placing such an outsized importance on social media writ large. And was like, but it takes up this much space on my phone. So if it takes up that much space on my phone, why does it have this like enormously outsized impact in my life?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And so
but
I
it's
think
because it's become the new queer space, or the new men who have sex with men space. Yeah, I mean, and I freely...
And I'm not saying that just to qualify for qualifying sake, but I say that to say, like, Grindr is not the be-all and end-all of queer life. That we have bestowed it with that much power.
Yeah, but then the issue is, and I hope I'm not like becoming pedantic or being too esoteric, but in essence, if we're all believing it is, and we're all treating it as such, then that's the reality we create for ourselves.
But you realize that, like, what we're talking about are not opposing points.
No, not at all. I just want to have... I mean, it evolved very quickly from just... I literally just... Honey, I just wanted some pointers to make my podcast less crappy and less ratchet, you know?
Yeah, to serve, yeah.
Do you actually believe that long-term relationships... What's your opinion on it? Do you think they're dying out? Do you think we don't need them? Do you think we're losing the ability to have them? Maybe...
I have no idea.
Okay.
Only because, like, I don't think... I don't know. I just think it's very pessimistic to look at things like that. Because... Okay, so let's work this out. Let's unpack it. So, if long-term relationships were dying out, let's say they hypothetically are, right? And I desire a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
But quote-unquote, they're dying out. Well, it makes me an anomaly. It means that I'm not going to be able to find what I need because they're dying out. Like, it immediately frames my life and my desire against this thing that's dying out. That's not possible. And so I don't know if long-term relationships or short-term or whatever. Like, I think relationships have always been something that grows and contracts and gets better and gets worse. And sometimes you grow out of somebody and they grow out of you and you have to move on and you have to heal. Like, I think any ideas we have about the length of a relationship, like, obscures like what the point of a relationship is, which is substance, right? And emotional connection and friendship and comradeship and kinship and respect. And so those are the most important things, right? So maybe a better question is, do you think, it's more of a human question than the length of a relationship question, I think. That's what I think.
So do you think we're getting those? I mean, my theory is we're getting those more from our friends. Like, I've noticed... gross generalization, so I qualify this, but when straight people start having kids, it's all about the kids. Because gay people, unless they choose to create a family, which takes a little bit more planning than it would for straight people, because it's not going to happen from a man inseminating another man.
Although I'm trying,
yeah. Our friendships seem to be a lot deeper than those compared to, my straight friends who are now married with kids. And I feel like gay guys get a lot of their emotional intimacy from their mates as opposed to a partner who's in there that you're creating a family with in that moment.
Really?
Do you not? Or, no, feel free to tell me I'm wrong. That's why I have you here.
Well, I don't know if anyone's wrong, but I was just curious. I find that a very curious position because it seems to me like that is what we learned versus what we experienced.
In terms of, you mean like the heteronormative society pressuring you to have kids and settle down and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so like, I don't know. I mean, I have very, fulsome friendships, right? People who are very close to me and who provide a lot of emotional support. Yes, but I've never been a straight man, so I can't quite juxtapose the two, or compared the two rather. I don't know. I'm not sure that's backed up in data.
It's not. No, that's completely anecdotal. I didn't say I was backed up in data. What I'm really trying to say is, once my straight friends have kids, I never hear from them ever again, unless you're offering free babysitting. Like,
yeah,
or that is my and that's universal. Like,
totally,
but you're right. That's completely.
But it
anecdotal.
won't just be their gay friends they move away from.
Oh no, because again, I watch my sister. Right, if you didn't have a child of similar playing age as their child. And it wasn't like she was trying to be shady.
Yeah.
Her best friend of 20 years she sees once a year. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And I'm not trying to make it significant or one is better than the other.
So what are you getting at, though? What's your real question?
So, clever. Because what I'm getting at is then... Let me just talk about for me, because I'll get in trouble if I generalize. If let's say, because I am, that type of person who thinks I want... a long-term relationship, but I feel that they're dying out, at least amongst the gay male community, or men who have sex with men. And I have a chapter in the second book that I'm writing, like, am I the dinosaur? Like, do I relegate myself?
Okay, so what is it about a long-term relationship that you are imagining?
I love building something with someone. And I don't think you can build something as intimate and powerful and long-standing as you can with a good friend. I love my best friends. And I've had, last night I was having drinks with a friend I've known for half my life. But I wouldn't ask him to move in and I wouldn't want to see him every single day. Mm-hmm. Where I do love the fact where, I love either having a boyfriend come home to me or me go home to them or something like that. I love the ability to really build and create and feel like, you've got a partner in your life as opposed to, let's be honest, like with friends that are like this in general, it's sometimes a bit like herding cats, right? We've all got our own little agenda and we find common ground and we connect on the common ground.
So there's a sense of stability.
And so that always has appealed to me. It's always called to me. And there is a sense of, I felt like I could always find it until about, 4 or 5 years ago. And then it started getting harder and harder and harder.
And so when you say that you could, I'm like flipping this around now.
Hey, that's all right.
So when you say that you could always find it, was that because you had some long-term relationships where you got to build something with people?
Yeah, so, and this is all, heaven forbid, I hope at one point I do get to write my second book, but I kind of I went into a relationship that was right before Grindr started, and I had like a 3.5-year relationship.
Which I think was 2009 it launched.
Yeah. So it was like basically I went into the relationship, and it was really my first real long-term relationship where at least I thought it had the potential to really go somewhere. And I went into that relationship and the gay scene was one way. I came out of the relationship and the gay scene was a completely different way. Yeah. And I spent like a year and a half kind of flailing. I ended up dating a guy who was absolutely amazing, but I don't know if he was right for me, which again, I will explore in great detail in the next book. And then it was like when I got out of that relationship, it was like it had descended, it had gotten even seedier, and it was already kind of seedy anyway. And then I had another relationship where I thought it could really go the distance or something was really possible. And then that didn't happen. And but my hypothesis from the first book is we're the first generation to really open a phone and have potentially 1,000 sexual partners or 500 or how many you can narrow your age ranges and preferences and things like that. But the overwhelming of choice, I think, is somewhat what I asserted in my first book is, people relate to what they want like a lottery list. Like, oh, if I win the lottery, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. They want an easy payoff. They want no investment. They want no real risk. And they want like everything that their hearts ever desired, and they want it right then and there.
Yeah.
As opposed to you have to look at relationships the way you would starting a business or starting a podcast. Like, you have to be willing to put in hours, work, effort, energy, and it's not just going to be, a Disney fairy tale all the time. And I think the combination of multiple options combined with apps, just not even dating apps, but look at Amazon, where you have Amazon, what's it called, Prime Now. You can press the button and it's on your doorstep in an hour. So all these things, and you look at Instagram, you post something, you instantly get, a dozen likes or 100 likes.
Yeah, so I think that we have to, I hear what you're saying.
Right.
And I think that you're totally right. I think the way that we have interacted with technology and thus each other has changed a great deal. And we are the first generation who's dealing with this technology, that is rather reckoning with technology in this way. And I think that how we as a generation deal with reality television, social media, the internet, and dating apps is probably going to be our defining feature for how we come out of this.
Let's not mess it up.
Well, but what this moment is also teaching us is that we don't have to settle, right? And so what we're also seeing is a generational shift.
Okay.
So, which has perhaps been exacerbated or encouraged by technology, sure. But actually the way that we think as a generation is different to our parents. And there's lots of data that backs that up. And so I think when you're talking about like people want things now and Amazon Prime and investing in our futures, like I think that we're the generation who has like been able to save the absolute least for our future, right? Like so many of us are never going to be able to afford a home in a city like London. So many of us are not saving for our retirement already. Sure. Like this is instructive of the society in which we live, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that this idea of the long term of this kind of emotional investment into people and ideas, when actually what we've seen historically is that, perhaps incorrectly, we've seen is that, shit doesn't last. So I think we're growing up and we're learning as we go. And I think for those of us, because what you're talking about is not really I asked you like, why a long-term relationship? And you talked about, and I'm paraphrasing, but stability, intimacy, companionship, right? Those things actually I don't imagine have a shelf life, as it were. And I think you've associated long-term with these things. But I think that if you're looking for those things and not the long-term relationship, that it'll be a more generative journey. That's my hunch.
Okay.
Because
I'm over
there
being
might
coached.
be people who, I'm not trying to coach you. I'm just saying I'm hearing what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is what's coming to my mind, right? Because I too want 5 kids. I've got them all named. I can see them in my head. They're going to be adopted.
Names?
So my eldest is Dio.
Okay.
D-I-O, which is short for short for Dionyso. Okay. Which is the Latin form of Dionysus.
Right.
Because Dionyso is the protagonist in 3 of my favorite novels. Valentina, Olivia, Theo. Dio and Theo, I know it's quite close.
Okay.
How many is that for? And Otis, I think, or Olivia.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But sorry, I didn't mean to distract you. So you want that too, but it sounds like there's a but coming.
No. I want that. There are the 5 kids. There's the husband. I can see in the periphery lots of women, like a village helping me raise the kids. And I don't know what that yet looks like.
Okay.
But I know, as in how I'm going to get there. But I do know that's what I want. And that driver is to create a family, to create a space, to adopt the children. I feel like it's part of my purpose in life is to provide a loving home for, Black kids.
You said something about we're the first generation that doesn't have to settle. And that was really interesting because, particularly when I look at my grandparents, there wasn't much dating back then. You just kind of married the person next to you, and you just kind of got through life that way. And that's how people married throughout the centuries. But my gripe with the new generation, are people, quote unquote, not settling, or are they kind of, in essence, are they searching for a laundry list, or are they searching through what are they really committed to having in their lives?
Well, I think that people don't know that themselves.
Okay.
Right?
Because I have a whole chapter on the, like, gay guys should do some work, and I've had friends.
Yeah, but you can't prescribe. That's my thing. is that
Okay.
You can't really prescribe that to other people, right? Because one, it makes an assumption about everybody, I think, right? And so when I say that we don't have to settle,
Okay.
what I mean is that, like, okay. So we're the third generation from the 50s, I think.
Okay.
Is that right? So
know.
the baby boomers,
yeah.
and then the baby boomers had children. So whatever. We're like 3 or 4 generations from there. And that was all about, this sexual propriety or whatever, and like you didn't blah 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 blah, and everyone got married and got 2.5 kids and the picket fence and the corporate job, and they stayed at Sears for 28 years and moved right. They retired. Like there was a very clear cut path to your life. This is what you did. And then it's gradually become less and less and less of that. The divorce rate has gradually gotten more and more. And it's not because all of a sudden there's a proliferation of choices, I think. I think it's that people have realized, I don't have to do what's been done before me. I don't have to go into this long-term relationship and find a husband and have kids and stay at this corporate job. So we're not talking about just like our relationship options opening up. We're talking about our life options opening up. We're talking about the entire landscape of what's possible for our lives. And so I think that we have to view, or I think that we ought to view relationships through that same lens, which is that we're going to presuppose here that technology is definitely exacerbating and in many cases making things worse. But we also have to say at the same time, it's also happening amid a climate of change, of not settling, of new ways of working and living and interacting, and friendships becoming, like, everything's changed. So I think sometimes this frustration that we feel as gay men that we can't find what we need goes back to my point that actually maybe we're not responding very well to the world around us as it's changing.
To take it back to, like, general podcast advice, and you're a greater intellectual than I am, because sometimes...
Which I don't think is true, by the way.
Oh, you're too kind. I get weird insights around dating, and they just pop into my head, or something bad will happen, and I can make a quote-unquote Grindr commandment out of it, or a rule. And sometimes I just want to stand on a soapbox and scream. Or I just feel like, oh, that was a really good insight, let me share it. And yet, I don't want to come across as preachy. I don't want to be a know-it-all. I don't want to be annoying. But at the same time, I do feel like sometimes gay guys treat each other terribly.
I think that you have to distill it.
Okay.
If that's what you're asking.
How do I do it? Well, how do I tell my truth and not look like a jerk? Or not look like a know-it-all?
Well, I think that some things are for your diary.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And other things are to share. And so I think if you want to share what's in your diary, you have to distill it, right? Like you have to get to the crux of it. And you have to, and I think that's the journey that you're on with this podcast and with Grindr Survivor, is it's an internal one. Yeah. Right? And it's one that we all share, that we're all on with you, because we too want to know, like, what are we doing? And if we're tuning into Grindr Survivor or reading the book, it's because we're curious about, we won't tune into it because we think we have the answers, because we think you have the answers, rather. We'll be tuning in because it's great to hear someone else think about this out loud too.
Sometimes I do think I have the answers.
Yeah, and you might.
And maybe I'm being a jerk, or maybe my answers are good for 10% of the gay populace. I don't know. But sometimes I want to sit there and scream, let's stop being so stupid.
I would encourage you, this is my advice, to answer the question for yourself. So if you did have an experience with someone, why did it make you mad? What are you upset about? What do you think it demonstrates? How has it made you feel? And then have that conversation with yourself first, and then figure out what it is that you want to say about that experience, right?
Well, Josh, let me kind of wrap up this podcast with a question you asked to all your people on Busy Being Black. What do you hope for, Mr. Rivers?
I actually don't know.
You don't know what you hope for?
It changes all the time. I think, like, what I hope for on a personal level is is what I see in my head. So this is very personal, as in what I want for myself. And I want the 5 kids and the husband and the house that I've designed. And yeah, there's a very clear future. I hope that comes true. I hope that we begin to understand ourselves better.
Okay.
And in doing so, create more space for people around us. And I don't just mean to gather people around us, but that we create more space for people to be flawed and to be broken and to be hurting.
Yeah.
And that we find, because I think it's only when we understand ourselves and that we're flawed and that we're human and that we want people to accept us at our most shattered or at our most awful, that we can then understand how important it is to create that space for people around us, that they know that they can be whoever it is they are at that moment.
Well, someone once said, if you can't make space if you can't make space for people to be petty and small, you'll never be able to make space for them to grow. And that just, I kind of heard that when you were saying that, because it seems like in this age of social media, we expect everyone to be perfect. And when they're not, we all love to put everyone else on the cross except for ourselves. And that's the weird thing of a very weird backlash of social media. We can all judge very quickly, and I would say stupidly. Maybe we're both on a journey to try to figure out how do we reclaim our humanity.
Totally. And I think it was Reverend Angel Kyoto, who's like this queer black Buddhist, and she said something like, love, when someone asked her what love is, she said, love is creating the space around ourselves, the space within ourselves, for people to be themselves fully.
Okay.
And that's what love is. And
Powerful.
so I hope for that. Like, I hope that we create these moments, that we create the space inside ourselves.
And one quick follow-up, where is your house with the picket fence and 5 kids? Is it
Well,
in
it's
the
not
UK
a
or
picket
in the
fence.
US? Okay.
No, it's actually Madrid.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. So I wondered, like, where is it? So you want to, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite clearly going to be house number 2, maybe, but...
All right. You'll make it, if anyone will. Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for being on my podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
And thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. And if you liked the podcast, don't forget to please like, subscribe, leave us a comment. And as always, if you didn't know, Josh Rivers has his own amazing podcast, Busy Being Black. Check it out soon. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.